Hello guys, so I welcome you to the first lecture of the second part or second section of this course. Okay, in this lecture we will try to get familiar, we'll get familiar with decision control statements in C++. Okay, decision control statements. Okay, in C++. So what are decision control statements? The statements which execute as per the given condition are called decision control statements. Some examples of decision control statements are if, and else statements. Okay, they work just like the plain English. Okay, just like we use the plain English. So what is the syntax of using these statements? Okay, so for first we go through the if statement. Okay, so the syntax for using if statement would be if, then we use parenthesis. Inside parenthesis we write a particular condition. Okay, from this curly braces the scope of the if statement starts. Okay, we'll write some statements in between the scope of the if block. Okay, so this is complete if block. Okay, from this opening curly bracket to this closing curly bracket, inside this block there will be some statements. I've written only one single I've denoted only one single statement, but there will be a number of statements. So if this condition holds true, then these number of statements inside the if block are going to be executed. Okay, so let me give you an example. Okay, so let's suppose, okay, so this is an example, right? So let's suppose we declare a number a and we initialize it with value 10. Okay, we declare another variable, integer variable b, and we initialize it with variable 5 with value 5. Okay, so now if we write something like this, okay, if a is greater than b, then let's say we print hey. Okay, we print hey, and since it is a string that we are going to print, so we enclose it with double quotes. Okay, end l. Okay, I already told you the reason why we use no the that we use double quotes to enclose the strings, right? So we close this if statement now, and with if we use else. Okay, so if this condition holds true, then the statement inside the if block gets executed. Okay, this is the if block between these two curly braces, which is these statements. Okay, if not, if this condition holds false, okay, or this condition is false, okay, so in that case the control goes to the else statement, where inside the else block the statement inside the else block gets executed. Okay, so there might be some statements inside the else block, and these statements will be executed in that case. Okay, so for this example, the value of a is greater than value of b, right? So only the statement within the if block gets executed. So hey will be printed on the screen. Okay, let's just try it on the Visual Studio Code now. Okay, so we just create another program. Let's call it decision. Okay, .cpp. Now let me write the boilerplate code. So okay, so we declare a variable a and we initialize it with value 10, and we declare another variable b and initialize it with value 5. Okay, now if we write if statement, if a is greater than b, we can write any statement here. Okay, any number of statements and any statement. Okay, let's say we want to print hey here. Okay, so we'll write like this. Otherwise we go to else block. Okay, and we'll write a is let's say less than or equal. Okay, equal to b. Okay, yeah, so let's try to run this code. So in this case, for our example, the value of a is obviously greater than b, right? 10 is greater than 5, so this first statement gets executed and the program terminates. Okay, it doesn't go to the else block if the condition of if block is true. Okay, if the condition is of if block is true, the statement within the if block gets executed and the program terminates. Okay, it won't go to the else case. Okay, it only goes to the else case if the condition within the if block fails. Okay, let's suppose, let me execute this statement first. So he gets printed on the screen. Okay, this is because the condition of if block holds true. Okay, a is greater than 5 here, so that is the reason why he gets printed. Now in a case where a is less than b, let's see what gets printed. Okay, so in this case a is less than or equal to b gets printed because a is less than b, right? And for this condition holds false. Okay, so a has value 2 which is less than b, right? So this condition holds false, so the control goes to the else block. Okay, within the else block we have written only one single statement, which is this: a is less than or equal to b. So this gets printed on the screen, right? A is less than equal to b. Okay, now let's clear the terminal again. Okay, even if we try to write another statement here: hey, this is me. Okay, so this statement will also get printed since the control goes to the else block, right? Yeah, so hey, this is me also gets printed on the next line. Okay, so yeah, this was all about if else. Now what happens, or in what conditions we use else if? Okay, for else if we need to know one more thing. Okay, so we'll add one more page. Okay, so now else if statements. Okay, now in what cases else if statements are used? Let's suppose we have multiple conditions. Okay, multiple conditions. Okay, so in case of multiple conditions, we are going to use else if statements. Okay, now let me give an example for the else if statements. Okay, example would be, let's say we have declared a variable a with value 10. Okay, we have declared another variable b with value 5. Okay, let's take the same example. Now if we write something like this, we have three conditions, right? Either a will be greater than b, either a will be less than b, or a will be equals to b. Okay, so how we can write this statement using else if? Okay, so the syntax will be something like this. Okay, okay, so the syntax would be something like this. Okay, so syntax would be something like this. So if a is greater than b, let's say we try to print uh, a is greater than b. Okay, if a is greater than b, then the statement, all the statements within the if block gets executed. But since here we have only taken one statement, so only this statement gets executed. Okay, now for the condition, for the second condition, we can use else if block now. Okay, else if, and else if also has the condition block here. Okay, so a is less than b. Okay, then let's just start writing it from the next line. Okay, so else if, okay, a is less than b, let's say we print this thing. Okay, a is uh, less than b. Okay, and let's say finally we can use else now. Okay, we can use else. We print uh, okay, a is equal to b. Okay, because it is obvious. Okay, if a is neither greater than b nor it is less than b, then it must be equal to b. Okay, so we can also use else if statement for the third case. Okay, for this case either we write it this way, okay, the way that I have written. Okay, or we just remove this else block here and we use the condition by using else if. Okay, so we again use else if now. Else if, okay, so this is a change. Okay, else if a equals to b. Okay, I already told you this is the this operator, this is a part of relational operator. It is also called comparison operator. Okay, so it compares, it asks a question. Okay, whether a is equal to b or not. Okay, if it is equal, it will return 1. Okay, which signifies true as the boolean value, right? So if a is equal to b, then in that case we print a is equal to b. Okay, equal to b. Yeah. So yeah, so that was it. This is how we use else if statement. Okay, so yeah, so one more thing. Okay, one more thing that I wanted to tell you is that what happens is, so if this condition satisfies, okay, so the statement within the if block gets printed, sorry, gets executed, and the program terminates. Okay, it won't go to the else if block, neither it will go to this else if block. Okay, but what happens is, let's suppose we write it this way. Okay, if a is less than b, uh, if a is less than b, okay, then let's say if a is less than b, we try to print a is less than b. Okay, and then okay, let's say we have declared a as having value 5, and let's say we have declared b as having value 10. Okay, now, and we again use if instead of using else if, instead of using else if statement, we again use if here. Okay, if here, so if a is less than 10, okay, uh, then see out. Okay, a is, let's say we print this. Okay, less. Okay, okay, and let's say now we use else if. Okay, else if a is greater than b, then we try to print a is greater than b. Okay, and finally, let's say we use else. Okay, uh, a, let's say finally we use a is equal to b. Okay, equal to b. Okay, okay, so how the program executes. Okay, so what happens is that first, okay, so what happens is, first the control goes to this if statement. Okay, so it checks whether this condition is true or not. So a value of a is 5 and the value of b is 10, so a is obviously less than b. Okay, so this statement gets printed. Okay, this statement gets printed. Now if there was else if statement here, then this would have been skipped. Okay, but since it is if statement again, so it will again check for the condition. Okay, and again the condition holds true, right? If the value of a is 5 and 5 is less than 10, obviously, so this statement also gets printed. This statement also gets printed, and now it would skip this else if statement, and it would skip this else if statement as well. So the program terminates after executing these two if blocks. Okay, let me uh, code this example, and then I'll code this example as well. Okay, so let's see, or let's look at the first example. So it was something like this. Okay, okay, so let's see. Okay, let's get back to the Visual Studio Code. Now so we were having value of a as 5. Okay, 5, and value of b as 10, right? Now let's say we write the code. So if a is greater than b, let's say we try to print a is greater than b, right? Okay, so let's say we write else if statement here, else if, and here we'll write condition inside this parenthesis. Let's say a is less than b now. Okay, so if this condition holds true, let's say we cancel this. Okay, a is less than, okay, for equal to we'll write different. Okay, we'll write different statement, a is less than b. And lastly, we can write it this way. Okay, see out, a is equal to b. Okay, uh, Okay, so now let's try to execute this. Let's see what we get. Okay, before this, clear the terminal. Okay, let's try to execute this now. So we get a is less than b. Why is it so? Because the value of a is 5 and the value of b is 10. So it goes to the if block. The condition of if is a is greater than b, which is false. Okay, 5 is not greater than b, right? 5 is not greater than 10. So if block is skipped. Okay, so the control goes to the else if block now. So in the else if block, the condition is that a is less than b. Yeah, so this condition holds true because 5 is less than 10, right? So this statement gets executed, which is a is less than 5. Okay, a is less than b. Okay, so a is less than b gets printed, and here this else block is skipped again. Okay, so else if statement gets printed and the rest of the block are skipped. Okay, so you can, I already told you that you can also write it as this way. Okay, else if a equals to b, then in that case print uh, a is equal, okay, equal to b. Okay, okay, so let's clear the terminal. Okay, let's try to execute this now. Yeah, so the same output is printed. Now let's see by manipulating the values of a and b. Okay, so in this case both the values are equal. Now as per my idea, so this statement would get printed. Okay, because both of these conditions do not hold true, so they'll be skipped. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, so a is equal to b gets printed on the screen just because a is equal to b, right? The value of a and the value of b is equal. Okay, now for the third case, let's say we give it a value 10. Okay, now 10 is, a is greater than b, right? So this if block is going to be executed and this else block is going to get skipped. Okay, now let's see. Yeah, so a is greater than b gets printed, which is inside the if block, right? You can also write them this way. Okay, if you want, the code to look more cleaner. Okay, you can write it this way by having space in between. The space doesn't matter, but you should not, like, you know put the unnecessary spaces. Okay, so yeah, this was all about use of if, else if and else statements. Okay, now for the second example, let me tell you again. Okay, so if we use again if statement, if a is less than 10. Okay, then in that case we print a is lesser than 10. Okay, let's say we try to print this. Okay, and then we write else if block. Okay, else if a is less than b. Okay, so then we print. Okay, and finally we go to else. Okay, uh, a is equal to b. Okay, okay, okay. So if we try to execute this statement, it would, what happens upon the execution is that we have given the value of, okay, let's change the values. Okay, a becomes 5 and b becomes 10. So the value of a is 5. Okay, and a is greater than b, a is less than b, right? So this statement, let's keep it greater. Okay, let's say we give it 8. Okay, so, and let's say we give it value 5. Now this condition of this if statement is true, right? So the value of a is 8, which is obviously greater than the value of b, which is 5. Okay, so this statement gets printed, which is a is greater than b, right? And then again the control goes to if statement. If this would have been else if, then this would have been skipped. Okay, but since it is a if statement again, so it gets executed again. Okay, so the control goes to this if block, second if block, and here we again check for the condition. So if a is less than 10, then this gets printed. Okay, and the value of a, which is 8, is obviously less than 10, so this statement also gets printed. Okay, and now since it is an else if statement, and then moving on, it is an else statement, so both of these statements, or both of these if, else if and else blocks gets skipped. Okay, so above two statements gets printed, which is a is greater than b and a is lesser than b. Okay, let's clear the terminal and then execute the program. Okay, so let's see the output. So yeah, a is greater than b and a is lesser than 10. Okay, so these two statements get printed. Okay, now you can have, you can test your ability by writing several programs with these decision control statements, and to know the better, to have the better idea of how these statements work. uh, yeah, so that was it for this lecture. Hope to see you in the next lecture.